Welcome back to the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast with me, Bryce Bauer. Today, the topic is commitment. We all seem to understand what commitment is in most things because it's simple. If you don't commit to go to the gym and you consistently give yourself the option to bail, you're probably not going to get into shape. If you want to start a business, you have to commit to putting in the time, energy, money to do it. We all know that. But relationships are a little bit different because even if you pull back a little bit for a little while, it can have a huge impact. It's possible to be somewhat committed to the gym. A lot of people will go through phases of putting more time into exercise and then not. You can get by. With something like starting a new business, you could fail multiple times or sit on an idea for quite a while and really be okay. We know that at some point you really need to commit to these things, but you have the luxury of time in most cases because it's an individual endeavor. Now, let's talk about what that looks like in a long-term committed relationship or marriage. If your partner comes to you with a concern, a feeling, maybe there's been a rupture in the relationship, and you say with your words or energy or body language that you don't want to deal with that, her safety and security with you is going to plummet, and it will further decrease the longer you wait. Or if you start grumbling that you don't know if you want to be in this relationship, immediately trust is going to go to zero or something close to zero. She might still love you and want to try, but that felt sense that she really has a teammate that is committed to the relationship, she won't be able to force that. She won't be able to will herself into feeling that. Her body's going to say, I don't think you can trust this person. This is the big difference. I work with a lot of men who struggle to understand this concept, and there are parts of it that I'm still trying to understand myself. I recently had a conversation with a client, and I'll keep the story very vague, but essentially he had been in a long-term relationship with his girlfriend, and throughout the relationship, he'd broken up with her several times. And by the time he reached out to me, he was on the fence again, considering whether to reach out to her again and explore the relationship. So, on its face, no judgment. This happens sometimes. I tend to not tell people what to do in these situations. My agenda is to find the truth, the deeper truth, so that clients can have more awareness and make better decisions for everyone involved. So here's where it gets interesting. When I asked him why he was having trouble staying in the relationship, he said things like, it didn't feel right. Even though she checked all the boxes, the relationship didn't feel like home. And after some circling around the reasons, I decided to ask him if he wanted to hear my unfiltered opinion because he mentioned that he'd been hearing a lot of the same stuff from coaches and therapists and friends. So it was feeling redundant. So I said, all right, let me take a stab at it. I said verbatim, I don't know why the hell this woman got back with you after you broke up with her 5 or 6 times. And then you want to say that it didn't feel like home? Of course it didn't feel like home. How is she supposed to create a home for you to land in when you keep leaving? Luckily, he really appreciated this challenge. So we were able to get to more of the heart of the issue, which was his fear of commitment. A lot of times when we're scared to commit to something, we will unconsciously, compulsively make the reasons about something outside of us. And this is tricky because those reasons can have value, but it also allows us to avoid looking at our fear. And no matter how courageous you think you are, committing to a woman is one of the scariest things you will ever do because she could fucking break your heart, man. She could run off with someone else, maybe take a significant amount of your resources, find a way to control your life. I'm not saying that someone actually has the power to control your life, but it could feel like that. It could look like that. She could, in theory, make your life a living hell. And just about everyone has a person in their life with a story like that. This person ruined me. So entrusting your heart to somebody is a really big deal. Even though a lot of men generally understand the idea of commitment and trust and what that takes in a relationship, they understand it intellectually. I don't think a lot of men understand the nuance and complexity, the energetic component to commitment. One way to think about it is like this. There's a common team building exercise where you will stand a few feet apart from someone and you will reach out and press your palms against each other's. Initially, when you're standing pretty close to each other, there's no weight shift. You can kind of stick your butt out and lean towards someone without feeling like you're gonna fall over. But there's a moment as you're prompted to move your feet farther back that something changes. All of a sudden, you both need to start to manage the amount of pressure, the amount of weight you're putting against each other in order to not fall. At first, you still feel pretty safe, but if you get far enough back, this exercise gets harder and harder. And you could get to the point where if both of you can't figure out this balance, you're going to fall on your face or hit your heads together. So there's going to be quite a bit of tension and it's going to require a lot of focus. The reason why I'm giving you this metaphor is that I want you to understand what it looks like to lean in and lean out. What are the levers? What are the mechanisms? What does it look like when we don't lean in, we don't commit? And I'm not saying that in all situations, you just go all out and put all your weight into it, because that has its own consequences if she can't be there to hold you there. But what I find more often than not is that men are more scared to commit and they lean out without knowing that they're leaning out. They're doing the thing where they stick their butt out and think they're leaning in, but they're really not. They're not trusting their wife's judgments and opinions and feelings. They're second guessing all of that. They're not bringing in their own vulnerability to feel out what their wife can hold. They're assuming she can't. Sometimes listening to men drives me crazy because they don't see a lot of the contradictions that they hold. For instance, men like to think that they're so simple, but then they'll hold back on sharing more about their history and their feelings because they don't think that people will get them or it will be too intense for them. So what's actually true? Are we simple or are we trying to pretend to be simple because we actually know that we're very complex creatures with colorful histories that even we're too afraid to confront? Think about that. It doesn't make any sense. If you're a human, you're complex, you're complicated, you've got some baggage, that's how it is. So let's go back to commitment. Usually, after the honeymoon phase wears off or ends abruptly, we start to put more chips in the pot. We're naturally going to be more protective. That's a normal part of the relationship process. But one thing that I see a lot of men do is that they want to put the relationship on autopilot where it's safe. So you generally know me, I generally know you. Let's keep it positive, avoid conflict, and cruise through life. That can work for a while, actually, maybe forever. I do think some people do that. Lucky you if you have a relationship where the personalities match in such a way that you really don't have conflict. I could theorize that you avoid things to keep the peace. But either way, I think a lot of people who are really struggling in the relationship would look at that as an upgrade. They're a very small percentage, though. I think like 3% in the last study that I saw. 3% of the 1,500 couples that they interviewed said they never fight. But anyways, I'm talking to the 97%. When men try to put the relationship on cruise control and conflict comes up, difficult feelings come up, that's a problem. The reality is that you're being called into more commitment. That's just what's happening. Life happens, feelings happen, your feet move a little bit further apart. Maybe you're on different pages about something. So if in that moment you stand straight up and say, you're on your own with this one, you turn your back, what's your partner going to do? They're going to be forced to stand straight up too. They have nothing to lean on. And the first thing you're going to notice is the distance. This feels disconnected. You feel further away. You seem cold. Maybe your partner appears angry or sad. It may seem logical to point the finger at her, but really this is about the us. Maybe she pulled back too simultaneously. But if one of you doesn't come back to the circle and say, here, come on, I got you, that distance will remain. And guys, I have bad news for you. This is just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. I still think it's true. Men are the ones who struggle to do this more. They more often than not, pull back first. Sometimes they're just freaked out by their partner's emotions. They think there's something seriously wrong when there's not. We can learn how to hold feelings and we can learn how to commit better. Commitment is a skill. Of course, you have to want to do it too, but the act is a skill. And what I didn't say to this client, I thought about this later on after I went through all this high level commitment talk. There is a reality that at some point, we just have to do it. We have to make a choice. Drop that fucking anchor, you know? I've only done that with a few things in my life, three that I can think of. One is sobriety. I stay sober no matter what. It's been 18 years. That's what I think I need to do to have a quality life. Two, I'm committed to my health. I want to live a long life. I want to have energy. I want to be able to do things. So I have a decent diet and I exercise pretty often. And number three, I'm committed to my wife. More specifically, I'm committed to having a growth-oriented relationship with her. That means that we don't shy away from feedback, from conflict, from feelings. We're going to stay together as long as both of us are working on it. We're going to stay in the fire. And it can get fiery. We have a lot of respect for each other, but we butt heads sometimes. We are not a keep the peace type of couple. I mean, if you looked at our life, I think you'd see it as very peaceful, but there's also no hiding. If there's a comment, some tone, an attitude, either one of us is going to call that out like immediately because that's the type of relationship we're both committed to. And I want to do this with her. I know that I could quit this and start over with somebody else, but I don't want to. Whatever relational struggles I already have will stay with me because they're mine. So it doesn't make sense in my head to continue looking out there for somebody else when I have someone who's committed to me right here. And we're 11 years in. Life is short. How many long-term relationships can you really have in a lifetime? Listen, commitment is tough. I get it. But let's look at our relationship to it honestly. You are the common denominator in all your relationships. If you're always the one breaking up with someone, or emotionally bailing, resisting getting help, not talking about your past, being told you're reserved, you're the one that needs to work on commitment. Your partner might be totally good in that department. It's just you. And if you're in a situation where you feel like you're the one who can commit more and your partner isn't, I've got two pieces of advice. One is to thoroughly look for your part in that. Sometimes there's things that you did earlier on or that you're continuing to do that have really damaged the emotional security, and now you're experiencing the blowback. So look for that. The second piece of advice is to get support. A lot of times couples can't fix what's happening between them from the inside. They need an outside perspective, more information, more skills, guidance. You don't have to sit around and hope things get better if nothing's improving. I also don't think every couple is meant to work out. This isn't a magical recipe for everybody. But in a lot of cases where you have a really good woman by your side and you're just struggling with the relational dynamics, the amount of commitment that you're making moment to moment, day to day is probably one of the main things you need to work on. Okay, well, thanks for listening today. And I would strongly recommend joining a men's group, whether it's mine or someone else's. They're really powerful. You can find more info on my website. I will see you next week.